Hi, welcome to Get Organized, aka Start the New Year with a Plan. I'm Alegre Ramos, and I'm so excited to have you here today. Now, maybe you're watching this because you bought the mini course to get organized and you are ready to jump into your New Year planning, or maybe you're just checking this out because you're curious and this is up and available and free for you to check out. I just thought this would be a good way for you to get a taste of what it's like to work with me before working with me. But also, for those of you who have committed to the course, congratulations. That's amazing. Sometimes we need a little pep talk before we dive into the course. So that's what this is. So, we're going to just get into it and I will tell you more about myself and the course and everything as we go. But first off, I want to make sure that you have something to write with and a piece of paper or a notebook or a journal. Extra points if you already have a planner and are writing in the planner. Do that. Awesome. Fantastic. Let's get started. Grab that Post-it note and I want you to answer this question. By becoming a better planner, I have more time for dot, dot, dot. There's a reason you signed up for this course. You want to get something out of it. What is it that you want to get out of it? Pause the video and write that down right now. Okay, welcome back. You've answered that question. Second part. And this is important to me because dot, dot, dot. Why do you want the thing that you said that you want? Why do you want more time or clarity or peace? Whatever it is, write that down, pause the video, and then come back to me. Okay, wonderful. Why is this valuable? It's great to have in your mind a goal, but sometimes there's actually a goal above the goal. So you want to get more organized. That's the thing you want to do, but that's not necessarily why you want to do it. And that's why this exercise is really helpful. Exercising, saying, I want to exercise more is valuable, great. But saying, I want to exercise more because I want to lower my cholesterol, well, that is a different level of motivation. So that's why I want you to write that down. Now, I want you to take this. Hopefully, you wrote it on a Post-it note, or if you wrote it on another piece of paper, I'm going to ask you to put this up somewhere visible. I always feel like your bathroom mirror is a really good place to put it. Put it there, and this will remind you why it is that you signed up for this mini course. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get going. But first, let me tell you about me. I've always been a curious person. My mom liked to say that when I was a child, my favorite question was, why? 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 And you know what? It's still kind of my favorite question. In undergrad, I was an anthropology major, and I've always been fascinated by the whole nature nurture question. And I like to say that I take my anthropology degrees and my business degrees, and I help humans human better. So much of productivity and time management wants to treat humans like we're machines, forgetting that we are biological creatures. I often say, you wouldn't feed a horse a steak, ask a dolphin not to swim, and keep a bear up through winter and expect them to be thriving. And yet we do that sort of thing to ourselves all the time. Okay, so I put the human back into productivity and time management. I recognize that as a human, there are certain things that we are bound by, either by nature or nurture. So, anyway, I've always asked why a lot, and I've also always had multiple interests. For many years, I actually owned a store that was a physical retail space and an online space called Green and Greener. It was a one-stop eco shop. So imagine Home Depot if it was run by Whole Foods, right? Everything from mattresses to Bath and Body to paint to toys. And I really, really loved it. Along the way, I also invented a food product. I'm a fourth generation food entrepreneur. Food is a passion of mine. However, I reached a point with food where I was going to have to wear a hairnet basically all day long. And I said, you know what? I don't think that's my superpower. And so I shuttered that. And while I was doing all that, I also became a mom and I decided to homeschool my kiddo. And at first, homeschooling looked like this, which was super easy. But eventually, homeschooling changed as she aged. And I never got to forget algebra. No, because I was the teacher teaching algebra. Okay. For those of you who don't know, I also do stand up comedy. And sometimes I'd say that I'm going to write a musical about homeschooling, like, I never got to forget algebra. Anyway, I've been traumatized, as you can see. I also host the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. It's been going on for, I think, 7 years, and we are heard in almost 90 countries. It's so exciting. It's amazing to be heard so broadly. And I also wrote this short read book that became an Amazon bestseller. And as I said, I do stand-up comedy, but I don't just do it. I also produce a show. It's called Soy Saucy. It's been sold out every time it's been produced, and in 2026, we're actually gonna be recording it for airing, so it's not, a little hobby, it's actually something I do fairly seriously, and so, as you can see, I've always enjoyed doing a lot of different things. And because of that, guess what? I had to be really good at planning. And, fortunately, I'm just kind of wired for this. If you've ever done the Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENFJ. And there's a lot of, contention around Myers-Briggs, but I've taken it every 5 years for about 35 years, and I've always been an ENFJ. And one of the defining characteristics of ENFJs is that they love to figure out how to do something better and faster and more efficient. And that's me. I've always had a lot of interests. I've always been an ENFJ. And so I've always had to figure out how to make all these different things work in my life because that's just the kind of person that I am. So, the agenda for today is I'm going to give you some learning tips that are going to help you now going forward with this mini course if you decide to embark on that journey, and also just in life. Yes, in life. So then I'm going to tell you about something called the fresh start effect and why this is a really exciting thing to know about when you want to accomplish a new goal. And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about why change is challenging. And by telling you why it's challenging, I'm going to help you make it easier going forward. So if that sounds good, let's get going. Okay. So I asked you to get a pen and paper because the reality is when you aren't taking notes, you're basically just throwing water onto the table. You're not going to capture anything, right? When you take notes, that's when you retain things. That's when you're putting things in your cup. In fact, the brain science says that you'll remember 70% more if you take written notes. How do we know this? Because this guy named Ebbinghaus, this is called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And what it says is that if you don't take notes within 20 minutes, you will have forgotten half of what you heard today. Okay, what's the point of even listening if you're going to forget half of it within 20 minutes? And within the end of the month, you will have basically forgotten everything. You'll have forgotten 80% of what I say. And who knows? It might even be faster if you haven't drunk enough coffee, right? I'm not naming names. I'm just saying. So I don't want this to happen to you, right? You want to be here to learn something. Therefore, learning tip number 1, take handwritten notes. The brain science shows that handwritten notes are so much more powerful than when you type. The reason why is because when you are writing, it forces your brain to slow down and gives it time to absorb the information. Whereas when you're typing and you're just screaming away on your keyboard, your brain doesn't have that much time to think about the things. And so it just kind of doesn't retain as much. So, if you want to get the most out of this course and any future courses that you take or lectures or meetings or anything, take written notes. The other thing is don't just take them, but review them. You can see on this graph here, this is the way to overcome the forgetting curve. If you review your notes and then you kind of space out the intervals, you will re-up how much knowledge you are retaining. So for instance, I do this with books all the time. If I really, really like a book, I will reread it, not right away, but within a few months or something. And I'm always amazed at how much more I get out of it each time. And it also solidifies the learning that I had done the first time, or even helps me understand it a little bit better because sometimes your understanding changes as you gain more experience. So review the notes. Review the notes with a little bit of time in between. That's called spaced repetition. And then you will be on your way to actually retaining this information. Okay. So you're going to take your notes, you're going to review your notes. And then the next part of really retaining is to implement the information. Okay. I am giving you information. However, that doesn't mean that you will now be a expert at starting your new year, right? No, you will have just taken in some information, just like when you watch a movie for the first time, you took in some information. You're not an expert on that movie. Maybe if you watch it another 20 times and maybe read some blog posts analysis about it and stuff, then you'll become an expert in Star Wars or whatever, whatever your fetish might be. But just sitting there the first time doesn't mean that you've acquired that knowledge. So even though this is not a movie, this is a class, right? It's the same thing. You're taking in a little bit of information, but if you want to make that information yours, you need to review it and you need to implement it. So if nothing changes for you because you haven't reviewed or implemented your notes, you know why? Because your life is not going to get more organized simply by taking a class. Just like going to the gym, right? Just because you have the gym membership doesn't mean you're in shape. You have to actually do the work. And writing things down tells your brain that it's important. Reviewing it reminds your brain that's important. And then implementing it gives you real world experience to just cement that knowledge in your brain. As Mark Twain said, the dullest pencil is better than the sharpest memory. Okay, so hopefully you've been taking notes along the way. The great thing about this is since you're watching a recording, you can always rewind by 10 seconds and write something down again. Take notes, stop. I want you to get this information so you can really, really make a change. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is a fantastic psychological phenomenon known as the fresh start effect. What is it? You can read for yourself right there. It is a psychological phenomenon that makes people feel more motivated to pursue goals and make positive changes at the beginning of a time period. This can be a new year, a new month, a new week, a birthday or anniversary can also mark a beginning. It can be anytime, really. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, any day can be your fresh start. It's really up to you to decide, hey, I'm going to make this fresh start. But know that when you pick that day that you're going to start doing the new thing, you're going to be excited about it because it's a new opportunity. Another part of this phenomenon is that it creates a psychological separation from past failures and allows you to see new beginnings and you get to start fresh. So this is why people get pumped because it's like, I'm going to leave all that behind and I'm looking forward only. And that's why everyone gets pumped around the new year. But really, it can be any time of the year. So if you want to be more motivated, if you feel like you need to create some separation from the past, and if you want to up your optimism level, then take advantage of the fresh start effect. And look, we can't help it. There's just a lot of cultural baggage built up around New Year. So you don't need to pursue the new year with the whole like, oh my gosh, new year, new me. I'm going to pick 10 things and do that. I would not recommend that. It's not a great strategy. I'll talk about that in great detail in Get Organized in the other videos. However, I do want you to take advantage of the excitement that you're feeling. Okay. So, the fresh start effect. This is how it works. You have a goal. I'm going to move myself out of here. So, you have a goal, see down there in the right corner. Oops, I did not move myself out there. There's a goal down here in the left corner. And the goal is in the future. And what happens is you start pursuing that goal. Except as time goes on, your motivation is flagging. You're like, you're very excited when you start, right? And then it's going, and what the fresh start effect can help you do is it can help you get re-energized about it. So maybe every month you recommit to whatever it is that you're doing. There's always an opportunity to make a new start, and it will be exciting and it will move you forward. So I want you to take advantage of the fresh start effect that always happens around the new year. But it also happens around I get excited about a new year, a new month. I also get excited about my birthday. So these are all opportunities to make an exciting new start. However, it doesn't have to be those days. I actually made a really big health change in my life in the middle of the summer. Nothing psychologically significant about that day. It's just the day that I decided. And I will actually talk about that in one of my little pep talk videos that comes up in the Get Organized. So I will leave that story for then, but it can be any day. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about why change is challenging. I love this cartoon. I want you to find a bold and innovative way to do exactly the same thing that's been done for 25 years. Okay. This is why change is challenging. Humans are creatures of habit. Our brains are only 2% of our body weight, but it uses up 20% of our calories. And because we evolved as feast and famine animals, this is my anthropology background coming in. Feast and famine animals means that we put on fat when there's a lot of food so that we can have the fat to keep us sustained when there's a famine. So, not all animals are like that. There are animals that are naturally lean all the time because their food is always abundant. We are not that. So, because we're feast and famine animals, our brain is such an energy hog. It had to figure out ways to save energy so that it wasn't always burning through, our calories. And the way it did that was by creating habits. You'll notice that when something is habitual, you do it and you don't even notice that you did it. Like when you drive to work and you're like, how did I get here? It's a habit. That's how your brain saved energy. Remember how exhausting it was? I don't know about you, but for me, when I first learned to drive, I had to come home and take naps. I was so exhausted because it was working so much of your brain. That's why your brain created a habit. It's like, oh, there's a faster way to do this. I'm going to save energy. I'm going to make it a habit. This is why change is so hard because you're having to work against your habits. And creating a new habit takes time and it takes energy. So your brain, kind of resists it a little bit. However, I have found that by understanding why change is challenging, it has helped to make it easier for me because now I can just recognize, like, oh, I'm just going through this moment and it will pass. So, the framework I'm going to talk about is called the trans theoretical model of change. And this is a theory that goes through these 7 steps involved in initiating a change in your life. Pre-contemplation. Pre-contemplation is the idea that, oh, something disappeared. Pre-contemplation is the idea that maybe I need to make a change. Oh, it's on this next slide. Maybe I need to make a change. Step number 2, contemplation, is I need to make a change. So the difference between pre-contemplation and contemplation is that in pre-contemplation, you say, maybe I need to make a change, but I can't because XYZ. So it's kind of subconscious. You're thinking about it, but you're also at the same time coming up for reasons why this won't work out for you. So I need to exercise more, but I don't have time for it. Or I need to eat better, but it's so expensive. You come up with the excuse without even realizing it. And so it keeps you from moving forward. The next step is contemplation, which is when you've decided I need to make a change. Like making the change is more important. And I had this experience when I'm entering year 11 of perimenopause, and for those of you who don't know, menopause is the finish line. It's 12 months of not having a menstrual cycle. But all the time before that, when your hormones are dropping off, is called perimenopause, and it's a marathon. I never knew that it would last 11 years. Anyway, the point of the story is that pre-contemplation, maybe I need to make a change. As I was going through perimenopause, I noticed my cholesterol was going up, which is natural because in women, your body uses cholesterol to make female hormones. So I knew that. I saw it going up, but I was in pre-contemplation mode. I wasn't ready to commit. Finally, it hit a point where the doctor was like, drugs or lifestyle change? And I said, I need to make a change. That's when you make that mental switch. The third step, which is really where the secret sauce is for change, is the preparation stage. This is when you are researching and preparing to take action. And taking your time here is key. And I think this is why New Year's resolutions don't work, because people decide they want to make this change, but they haven't done any preparation. Because I knew my cholesterol was going up, and because I knew that this was a change that wasn't I wasn't gonna be able to, just accidentally get out of, I started reading books because I knew that I was gonna have to make a change at some point. So in this stage, maybe you're reading books, maybe you're talking to experts, listening to podcasts, asking friends that you know who've had the same issue, or even seeking out support groups. All of these things are fantastic, and all of these things are going to lead to success when you decide to enter step 4, which is action. And step 4 is just it's a starting line. It's day 1 of doing the new thing. That's it. Step number 5 is maintenance. Step number 5 means that you have been consistently doing something for 6 months. And the thing is that you actually might skip from step 4 to step 6. 6 is when you relapse, you stop doing the new thing. You might not even get to maintenance for a while. You might do something for 2 weeks and then stop, and then do something for 10 days and then stop. So there's kind of a little circular pattern happening there. Look, it's very normal to quote unquote relapse. Some people like the term recycle instead of relapsing because relapse does have this kind of psychological baggage with it. But just know that it is a human process. I mean, I have fallen on and off the health wagon so many times, most recently when my father passed away in 2020. And I would say that was like maybe the 4th or 5th time in my life where I had kind of been knocked down and wasn't eating as well as I could be or as well as I like to and wasn't getting as much movement as I like to. And you know what? It happens. So know that it happens, and maybe that'll make it easy for you to restart again. Don't beat yourself up. There's no point. Just recognize that you're human. We're imperfect. There's no one judging us but ourselves. So be gentle and just, hey, like, get started again. And when you relapse, basically you're returning to either step 3 or 4. So preparation or action. Either you're just getting back into it or you're saying to yourself, you know what? I need more skills. I'm going to join a support group or read another book or reach out to an expert, whatever the case may be. The final step, step 7, is termination. And that's when the change becomes just the new normal. It is possible to reach this point in life. I know that I've made changes in my life that I've had for some of them since I was a teenager. Like, I gave up soda when I was 11 years old, and I think except for maybe 1 or 2 A&W root beers at Disneyland when I had a root beer float, I've literally been soda free since I was 11. I gave up hair chemicals when I was 18. I gave up nail polish when I was 20 something. I can't even remember. That's how long it's been. It's been decades. I've been making my bed regularly since I was also a teenager. So it is possible to implement a change and just have it become so much a part of who you are. Have it become a habit that it's impossible not to do it because your brain, that autopilot thing, is now working in your favor. We all have habits. The question is, are they serving you or are they not serving you? And the more you can program yourself to engage in habits that serve you, the better you will be. So that is the wrap up of the Before You Start module. I talked about some learning tips for you for today, tomorrow, and the rest of your life. And those were to take handwritten notes, to review them 2 to 5 times, and implement what you've learned in order to overcome the dreaded Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. Secondly, I talked about the fresh start effect. Use this extra motivation to jumpstart your goals at any time, but know that you might feel a little extra oomph around the new year, around the new month, or around, your birthday. And finally, why change is challenging. The trans theoretical model of change explains why change can be hard, but it also gives you some hope and ideas for how to make it easier. Remember, preparation and accountability are key. I'm going to help provide you with some accountability with my other videos. Also, if you engage in the VIP package, then you'll get the 4 live Q&A sessions with me. So join me in starting the new year with a plan. I find it so exciting to begin every new year already knowing what I'm doing. Back before I did this, when I would start planning my year, once the new year had started, I always felt sluggish. It took a few weeks for me to get going and overcome the frankly, the depression that I would feel after the holidays were over. And so I've really found that by starting early, it just helps me get that much more motivated and excited about the new year. But remember, your new year can be tomorrow, January 15th. It can be whatever day you decide it to be. The thing is to get started. Okay. So thank you for joining me. If you've already signed up for Get Organized, I want to give you a couple little pointers. Get Organized is basically 2 short sessions. They're a little bit longer than this session was right now. They're going to be video recorded so you can stop and start and rewatch them. So about an hour long. I recommend doing them 1 to 2 weeks apart. You can do it back to back if you want, but because I'm asking you some big questions, you might need some time to just kind of percolate on those questions, and that can be hard to rush. So if you're feeling like you don't have answers to the questions I'm posing to you in the first video, take your time. Take a week, take 2 weeks. Maybe rewatch the video again. All good things. As I said with the learning tips, rewatch 3 to 5 times. I also want to give you the tip of scheduling when you're going to do all this. So write down in your planner, in your calendar, watch Get Organized video number 1. Rewatch Get Organized video number 1. When you make time for things, you're much more likely to actually do the thing than if you just say, "Oh, I'll do it when I get to it," or "I'll do it, quote unquote, when I have time." Guess what? There's no place in your planner or your calendar that says, "You have time now." So put it in at a time of day that makes sense for you when you are alert. We all have different chronotypes. I'll talk about that at some point. We all have different times of the day when we're more awake or less awake. Pick a time when you're awake to do this. Okay. Final thought, and this is kind of a little peek at the pep talks that I'm going to be doing. Final thought on analysis paralysis. Maybe you're super excited, but you're also scared. Maybe your brain is running and you're thinking, but what if I don't do this right? Or what if I can't figure out? Okay. Someone once asked me, what's the opposite of anxiety? And at first I was thinking, is it faith? Is it hope? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that they weren't the perfect exact opposites. Because to me, the opposite of anxiety is action. When you're in anxiety mode, you're stuck in the amygdala, the ancient part of your brain, which is the fight, flight, freeze part of your brain. And that part of your brain can't think. It's pure emotion. Anxiety is an emotion, emotion, emotion. By the way, I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. I just read a lot of stuff. I studied anthropology. And also, I've experienced all of these things myself. So you are in anxiety mode. The minute you decide to take action, the minute you decide to make a plan, you're switching your brain into your prefrontal cortex. And here's what's fascinating. Only one of them can be on at a time. So while you might not think that the opposite of anxiety is action, the brain science reality is you can only be in anxiety or action. And so they are opposites. So what I want to encourage you to do is to just start. Just start. Just start watching the next video or just schedule into your planner the dates. Just doing that little bit of action is going to help you overcome the analysis paralysis and get you moving. So I will see you in the next video. And if you haven't signed up yet, you can go to tinyurl.com facebook.com/getorganized2026. And I look forward to seeing you in all the other videos. And if you join me for the live Q&As, I look forward to seeing you there. One other note about the live Q&As, they are not cumulative and they will not be recorded. So people can come on, ask me a question, get the question answered, pop off. I just want to be available to people as questions come up. There are 4 live Q&As, 2 in December, 2 in January, and you will have access to watch these recordings until February 15th, 2026. I don't want to give you too much time because then when people have unlimited time to watch things, they tend to put it off. But I want to give you enough time to watch and review as needed. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.